those individual things that you do on a daily basis then have more of a purpose to what you're doing. And I honestly think that's a great place to start if you do want to build steps for success, is actually giving yourself tasks that have a meaning to it.
You know, the two of us are talking about this stuff, right? Because of that intersection between both mental fitness and physical fitness, right? Because it's like, you know, you can't expect to be in a good headspace and mindset if your body's going to shit.
I think changing bad habits is, I think people need to realise this. It does take time because you've been doing it for so long. And again, I suppose my bad habits, I used to binge eat a lot of cookies and chocolate and all that kind of stuff, partying a lot. They were my bad habits I was doing over a long period of time.
Like owning what we're doing and what's going on in our lives is the only way we can move forward, right? Because no one else is going to own it for you, right? So you decided at that moment, right, I'm not going to be the Rhys that is hungover on a Sunday morning. I'm going to be the Rhys that changes that, and I've taken ownership over that, and I think that's really powerful.
But I went in with the intention, knowing I had to change certain habits that I knew weren't serving me whatsoever. What's up, guys? Welcome to the Middle Ground podcast, and I'm your host, Rhys White.
Hi guys, it's Olivier Nicholas. Welcome to Middle Ground. And on this episode, we are going to be talking about the building blocks for success.
Yes, sir.
So, Rhys, why don't you tell me what you think the building blocks for success mean to you?
That's a good question to start with. I suppose there's a lot of elements that could go into that, and it's quite a broad question. But I think for me is setting clear goals for yourself and building habits that would particularly get you to where you want to be specifically. Because that sounds very simple, but I don't think enough people do that. They have a goal in mind, but they have no plan or idea of how they're going to get there, and they don't even know where to start. But there's kind of a few things that you could do to make that a lot easier for yourself, because I think, you know, if you do have a goal to work towards, it gives you something to work towards, but also it gives you more motivation, and you could almost kind of measure where you are in terms of where you're going to get to in terms of that. So I think what I tend to do with my clients, right, is break their kind of goals into monthly, weekly, and kind of daily tasks, if that makes sense. Like, so if someone has a goal, okay, let's just say, obviously, I'm a fitness coach. Someone wants to lose 12 kgs in weight. I'll be like, right, what do you have to do on a monthly basis to get to that goal? Okay, so that might be, you know, on a monthly basis, checking on their weight, their progress, maybe trying to lose 2 to 4 kilos a month, and maybe reflecting on their months. Okay, weekly goals, it could be scheduling workouts, doing grocery shopping, meal prep. And then when you get into the daily workouts, when you break it out into daily small steps, so that would be eating healthy, drinking enough water, sleeping, training, tracking your food. But those individual things that you do on a daily basis then have more of a purpose to what you're doing. And I honestly think that's a great place to start if you do want to build steps for success, is actually giving yourself tasks that have a meaning to it, that you then kind of say to yourself, if I do these things every single day for the next 6 months, a year, whatever it is, then it will take me to where I'm going to go. But not many people do that.
I think habits is absolutely crucial, you know. And I think, you know, I was talking to a client the other day, and one of the challenges that he was facing was that, I mean, ultimately career-wise, he wasn't where he wanted to be. You know, he'd been in sales for too long, but he talked about how, you know, I said, well, what does your day look like? What does your week look like, kind of thing? And he was like, well, to be honest with you, you know, like, I don't really have great eating habits and stuff, and I don't exercise a whole lot and that sort of thing. And they're, you know, this is what, I mean, I guess this is essentially like why, the two of us are talking about this stuff, right? Because of that intersection between both mental fitness and physical fitness, right? Because it's like, you can't expect to be in a good headspace and mindset if your body's going to shit. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, I'm not saying that that's what's happening in his case for a bit extreme, but habit stacking, like I said, or making if your issue, right, is that not issue, but if the challenge you're facing is that you feel as though maybe your eating habits aren't great. Okay, well, what are they? So what are you snacking too much? Okay, well, how do we make that harder then? How do we make snacking for you harder? Like maybe we don't put it in the weekly shop. Maybe we put snacks on, further away, like in the larder or somewhere that's far away, so that it's harder for you to do that thing, and then making good habits easier. So for example, so let's say you don't wake up particularly early, you don't have a good morning routine. We'll set your alarm and put the alarm clock at the end of the room or whatever, things like that to make your bad habits harder to do and the good habits that you want to create easier to do. And then suddenly it kind of changes your mindset around the day, right?
Yeah, that's totally right. And I think kind of from my experience, naturally the good habits eventually outweigh the bad habits, if that makes sense. So I suppose all habits work in exactly the same way, don't they? Like if it's a good habit or bad habit, they all make you feel good. So I think like if you're stressed and you go and grab a cookie or chocolate like I used to do, you get an instant good hit. Like you're eating something, you're eating chocolate, you're eating cookies, you feel good. Good habits, going to the gym, working out, doing yoga, meditating, all that kind of stuff. Again, you're getting a feel good factor from that. And I think changing bad habits is, I think people need to realise this. It does take time because you've been doing it for so long. And again, I suppose my bad habits, I used to binge eat a lot of, cookies and chocolate and all that kind of stuff, partying a lot. They were my bad habits I was doing over a long period of time. But when I started going to the gym, okay, and I started feeling good from the gym, that naturally started reducing my bad habits. I was started partying a bit less. And when I started partying a bit less, I stopped waking up on a Sunday super hungover. And, normally I'll stay in all day, whether it was a sunny day outside, I'll just stay in all day, order Domino's pizza and, pull the curtains down. That was a bad habit. But when my drinking and partying went down, I all of a sudden started waking up on a Sunday really fresh and energized. And I was like, shit, I've kind of earned myself another day on my weekend here where I could go out and go for a walk and have coffee and spend more time with my partner rather than staying in all day. So it was kind of like gradually over a period of time, the good habits outweigh the bad ones. But first of all, I think you need to know that, yeah, but both habits provide pleasure, but it's also trying to identify why is that bad habit happening? Like almost what's triggering it. Do you know what I mean?
Actually, do you know, to your point as well, when you say, what I liked about that is you say you identified when those habits were no longer serving you, right? So it's like you kind of went through that learning experience where you were like, oh, the Sunday morning hangover, this can't be a thing that kind of carries on because it's not going to get me where I want to be. So you took ownership over that, right? Like it could look, it's so easy to get into a cycle where we don't take ownership over things. And I think owning I'm not going to call that a mistake because it's just a lifestyle, but like owning what we're doing and what's going on in our lives is the only way we can move forward, right? Because no one else is going to own it for you, right? So you decided at that moment, right? I'm not going to be the Rhys that is hungover on a Sunday morning. I'm going to be the Rhys that changes that. And I've taken ownership over that. And I think that's really powerful.
Yeah.
I don't know if that was intentional or not, but whichever way it was.
Yeah. Like, I don't remember at the time, like intentionally thinking that, I remember, obviously when I spent my whole days in on the Sunday, I was like, I feel like a piece of shit. Like my girlfriend's like, let's get out of the house. I'm like, no, I'm hungover. It was awful. But but I think it was like the reward element of when I actually just started feeling better. I kind of gave myself an extra day. I was then going into work on Monday feeling better. That was like kind of a reward I was getting for doing something a little bit less. And I suppose with building habits, it's all about growth and sacrifice. Like, they both go hand in hand. You got to do a little bit less of something to grow in a different aspect of your life. And that's just kind of like one example of what I went through. But that could be done with training. When I started eating healthier, all of a sudden I was feeling better. And when you eat healthier, then you start reducing the processed foods, junk food, and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's kind of something that happened over a period of time. But I went in with the intention, knowing I had to change certain habits that I knew weren't serving me whatsoever. And
it's like, you can always earn more money, but you can never buy that time back that you lost. So like those like Sundays that you're, like hungover on the couch or whatever it was, like whatever that, that time that you're losing, you can't really ever get that back, right? I think like for me, that is always like the currency or the weight rather that time holds is far more powerful than money. Obviously, I'm not saying that everyone's made of money and that we've, it's infinite. Obviously, it's not, but there are ways that you can work to improve your situation, to improve that. You can earn more money. It's possible, but it's not possible to buy back that time back. So when you made an active decision to take ownership and start actually playing the main character in your life, and you started changing that, you didn't have to worry about losing that time on that sort of on the basis that you were before, I suppose.
Yeah and I don't know, it's kind of like, I think I just had to realize that talking from our last podcast is behaviors that I wasn't really kind of like proud of. And again, it's like what you said, you're wasting valuable time that you're not going to get back. It's like, how are you going to make the most of your life and your own time? And what habits do you need to do to get there? But I think with this, it's kind of like with your clients, how do you deal with habits? And is it mostly around work and stress, or is it mostly foods that they eat, or
I think it's obviously a mixed bag, because obviously everyone's different. But I think what does come up a lot is, I think one of the big ones is sleep, and like that sort of the idea of getting enough sleep to. I mean, okay, so your day starts in the morning, right? But really, it starts the night before the morning, right? Because if you don't have a good enough sort of nighttime routine, if you're staying up until 11:30 or whatever, then you're probably going to wake up groggy. If you're doing it every morning, it's not sustainable.
Of course,
so
yeah.
Like one of the people that I worked with had exactly that challenge. They were, and they, 2 kids and stuff, and they were. So that idea of having a healthy lifestyle suffered, because it was sort of late nights, not like out drinking, but just up on YouTube or whatever, and then early mornings. And then it's like, okay, so you're less likely to do that morning workout if you do that, right? So it's like, you have to start by correcting that first thing. And then so one of the things we worked on was helping to support a better routine. And actually, the changes were quite impactful. Actually, when you really sort of saw the progress after sort of a week or two, suddenly your brain's ticking over a bit more. You're a bit more alert. You want to go and train. Suddenly you've got more energy for the kids. Suddenly you're actually tired at the right time, right? Because that's the thing, isn't it? If you're still wired at 11:30. There's probably a lot going on there. But if you're like actually changing your routine so that you're exercise in the morning, you go to work, do whatever with the kids, and then you're kind of tired at the right point to go to bed. In that point, if you can switch off enough. But
I think like changing habits. So for me, I used to always train in the afternoon. just because like as a personal trainer, I was quite flexible with my time. But then when I started going online, it made more sense to train in the morning, especially now I'm a dad. But I always considered myself not a morning person whatsoever. I was like, if I get up in the morning and train, I'm absolutely useless. I won't be able to do that. But that was just myself telling me I couldn't do that. But it was I was just kind of just making it up, really. And what I found is trying to get up early. Yes, it was hard for the first week, but then you just quickly adapt to it, don't you? And then now I'm completely a morning person. I'm up every morning, 6 a.m, straight into the gym. You know, my workouts are great. I'm not feeling tired. Do you know what I mean? But it took that first week of being like, this is fucking tough. I'm not sure I could do this. But then second week, all of a sudden, I was just like, I'm getting used to this now. Do you know what I mean? And I think it's just like changing habits is not easy, but if you stick to it for long enough, then they will stick. And I'm going back to what you said before. It's about trying to make the bad habits harder. I honestly think it's also about trying to make the good habits as easy as possible for yourself, right? So again, I'm gonna talk about me going to the gym in the morning. The mistake I did was I wasn't prepared, right? So I'll wake up in the morning, I'll try and find my gym clothes, couldn't find them. I was, rushing around trying to find my keys, packing my bag, all that kind of stuff. I was making the mornings as hard as possible for myself, which would then make it a hard habit to get used to. But what I started doing is, okay, so how about the night before, I fold up on my gym clothes, so it's right next to my bed, so I don't have, I literally jump out of bed, put those on. My bag's packed the night before, so that's all sorted. My lunch is in the fridge, ready. I put my keys in the door, so I don't have to run around like an idiot trying to look for my keys. That made my mornings way easier, right? And that could be done like in so many ways. I don't know, like if I'm trying to make my clients take some vitamins, I'm just like, look, put them by your car keys, because you're going to grab your car keys every day and we're going to be there. So what can you do to make that good habit easier for yourself? Do you know what I mean?
I quite liked as well, because I saw in your reel the other day and you had like the keys in the door. I quite enjoyed that. Like,
I lose my keys all the time, mate. Honestly, it's a nightmare.
It's funny actually, just because I remember like buying. My brother loses keys all the time. I bought him for Christmas once. I bought him, it's actually his wallet. I bought him a tracker so that he could always find his wallet. And then what ended up happening is he lost the tracker. But no, like on that habits piece as well, like I totally agree with you in terms of the adjustment phase, because I think, but that's the difference between, consistency is king, right? So if you consistently, because I was the same as you. I used to train after work, and my wife, who was then my girlfriend, like we would walk home from work and then like to begin our evening together. Except I was like, I'm going to go and train. I'll meet you back at mine at X time. And we ended up like losing a lot of that evening, and I was like, actually, this just isn't really working. So I was like, okay, so I'm going to start going in the morning just so that we can have our evenings and stuff. And then it wasn't working for me either, because because what I hadn't changed was the time that I went to bed.
Right.
So I was still going to bed at 11 or whatever on YouTube, or just because we were watching telly or whatever. But then trying to get up at 5:45, 6 a.m. to go to the gym, and it was just like it wasn't working. So then okay, right. 10 p.m. bedtime, and then it started to work, but not instantly. Which is to your point when you say like. That sort of adjustment phase. And I kind of like, I see it almost as like jet lag, right? Like if you go to like a different country that's got like a 5 or 6 hour time difference, you're not going to just be able to well, some people can, I don't know, like just go straight onto the new time zone.
Yeah.
But it's like, you have to just live the new time zone for a bit until suddenly you catch up with it. And it's the same with a habit, right? Like creating that early morning gym habit, you're not going to be able to jump straight into it. There's going to be that adjustment phase, but as long as you know that, then it's fine. You know what I mean? And then keeping that consistency, and you will just end up in the new time zone, as it were.
I think people go through that hard phase and give up too easily, kind of thing, right? And it's just like tell someone to go for a run for the first time. They're going to think it's fucking hard and awful. But if they keep running, then they're going to find it gets easier. And they start to enjoy it more. It works in exactly the same way.
Yeah.
But I think also kind of like in terms of like building blocks for success, we're talking a lot about habits, but I think another thing we're missing is also kind of being organized and having some sort of a plan. Like when I go into my week, I know exactly what days I'm going to the gym, what time, what days I'm doing my food shop, when I'm going to meal prep, when I'm going to work on my content, my programming, when I catch up with my clients. My week is so kind of like planned to the T, and you could call all those blocks in my week habits in a way, because I'm doing them consistently day by day, week by week. And that essentially is what, habits is. It's just doing the same things every day, and it's all leading to, where the path you're on. And I think organizing your calendar and if you're going into the week and you're like, yeah, I'm going to work out at some point. I'm not sure, but whenever I feel like it, whenever I wing it, before you know it, it's going to get to Friday and you have to cram in like 3 workouts on Friday, Saturday and Sunday. It should be set days, set times. You should be going into the week knowing exactly when you're doing X, Y and Z. And that honestly just makes things way easier, and it also makes the habits easier, because it almost becomes like a timetable that you kind of stick to throughout the week.
Definitely, I think I like to think that if you try to do something whenever, you're going to do it never, right?
Yeah,
it's like you have to, and I'm like I'm the sort of person that has to have my kind of calendar I need to know what I'm doing for the week, otherwise I feel like I'm on the back foot. I don't feel like I'm prepared, and I think you need to be prepared. And I think, and you mentioned like the idea of kind of where you're going, and depending on like where you're going, I think like it kind of made me think of another reason that I think, that building blocks for success is, for me, it's about, obviously we need to have motivation to be able to do the thing that we do, but I think for me, the biggest part is always like the purpose, like the why. And this is like whenever I'm working with clients, the most important part for me is to get to the why, like, why is it that you want the thing? Yeah, of course, everyone like wants more money, and everyone wants, whatever everyone wants. But like having the why is super important, because it will keep you going in those lower moments as well. You know what I mean? When you have those peaks and troughs where things aren't going so well, you're like, okay, well, I know why I'm doing this. I know that this is fine because why I'm going that way.
You're setting goals to either escape pain or work towards pleasure, right? And they're the two things that, when you're in the low moment, you need to be like, there's a reason why I'm doing this. I don't want to feel that way anymore. Yeah. Like, I don't want to be that person, like for myself, where I was drinking a lot, not feeling great, just felt completely shit, but I'm working towards someone who wants to be healthy, not for just myself, but for my son, for my partner. That's what's going to, get you through those tough times. So, what are you escaping from, and what are you working towards? So I suppose to kind of like sum up this podcast, for anyone who's looking to, set themselves a goal for the year, how can we sum it up for them?
Good question. I think my considerations would be, what is the year plan? What is the 6-month plan? And what is the 3-month plan? Even if that changes, it's good to have an idea of where we want to end up, even if parts of that change, because without a kind of an end point or some form of, goal, it's very difficult to strategize. It's very difficult to figure out a path that makes sense to get to it. So I think even if it's a lofty, in fact, I would encourage it to be relatively lofty. Where do you want to be in 3 months' time? where do you want to be in 6 months' time? Where do you want to be in 12 months' time? And then just review as well. So after 3 months, okay, did I get to where I thought I'd be in 3 months? No, I didn't. Okay, well, where did I end up? What could I change? What went well? What didn't go so well? What would I do next time? How do I recalibrate my path? How do I, you know what I mean?
Yeah. And I suppose it's about, you know, putting together a big goal, but also breaking up into small steps.
Yeah.
For example, again, you know, if a client is working with me and they want to lose 20 kilos, rather than seeing it as the big 20 kilo number, let's just start off by just doing, you know, celebrating 1 kilo at a time.
Yeah.
So if we lose 21 kilos, we're going to get to your goal. And that makes it, you celebrate more wins at the end rather than getting to 5 and you're like, oh man, I've got so far to go. Giving yourself purpose on a daily basis, like what habits do you have to do more of and less of to get to your goal? And I think one of my favorite sayings is, it's not about reaching your goal, it's about the person you have to become to reach the goal, right? And I think also, you know, once you've given your habits a purpose or your daily tasks and you're organised and scheduling your whole week, celebrate the progress on the way, I think, because if you're so fixated on the goal, you completely miss all the great progress that you've done in that time. So it's all, you know, just take a step back, compare yourself to where you are now in comparison to a week ago, 2 weeks ago, a month ago. Write down things of how you felt or where you were a month, 3 months ago, whatever that time is. Write down the things that you're happy that you've achieved now, and just compare the two, and that shows you're going in the right direction.
No, 100%. I think people don't celebrate their wins enough. Well said. Nothing to add to that.
Yeah, nice. I think we'll leave it on that. That was quite a good one, I think. Yeah.
Nice.
Sweet. But no, guys, appreciate you listening to the podcast again, episode 2. And yeah, if you like what we're doing, please subscribe. That'd be much appreciated. And yeah, we'll be uploading another episode next week.
Thanks, guys.